Hey everybody, how's it going today? With the National Video Game Day approaching, I think it's September 12th or something along those lines, as well as RLCS finally finishing its first circuit-based format season in fruition. They finally got to do the live events. We finally got to see what it looked like with some refinement. I figured it was a good idea to discuss the topic that I've seen debated quite a bit over on Rocket League. And I'm not talking is Rocket League dying? Is it going away? But more so, is Rocket League actually a tier 1 esport, or what makes a tier 1 esport? Primarily, I'm going to be focusing in on 3 different esports: League of Legends, Rocket League, as well as Counter-Strike, because they're also the ones I'm most familiar with. And I'll try to give some examples of other ones that are in some of the lower tiers as well. But I'm going to do this in 3 different steps. The first step, I'm going to talk about what actually determines the different categories and tiers. What are the factors that go into these different categories? The second thing is discussing certain things that esports are doing to separate themselves, as well as providing good and bad examples and things that we can learn even from Rocket League. And then the third one, ultimately trying to tell you where I think Rocket League stands and where it is headed. Because I think we've had a lot of arbitrary talk about Rocket League, but we haven't really had any of the supporting evidence to back it and why we think that Rocket League is going to be amazing. Obviously a little bit biased, but trying to be as objective about this as possible. So before we get into all that, as always, if you do enjoy these types of conversations, these type of me taking a step back and doing a little bit of homework and some research, let me know in the comments down below. Also, while you're down there, let me know how you guys feel about different esports, where you think Rocket League and others should rank. Is there any games that aren't on the radar that you think should get a little bit additional love? Things like Apex, ALGS, thumbs up, thumbs down, tier 1, 2, 3. What do you think? Let me know in the comments and while you're down there. Like, subscribe, notifications. Helps me out greatly. Trying to hit 50K. So first up, we got to talk about how do we define the different tiers. Tier 1, 2, and 3. We're going to talk about what goes into the different categories, and then also break down the difference between tier 1, tier 2, and 3. So these are the determining factors that are how these things get decided. The first thing is event proportions. This is the size of the prize pools, the number of participants, third and first party organizers, and the environment and arena capacities. So, for example, you're looking at the RLCS, the most recent World Championship for 2021-2022. 13,000 seats sold. You're talking the capacity was fulfilled from what it looked like. There was still an empty seats, maybe potential third party. You're talking a prize pool for the entire season is 6 million, but this particular event was 2.085 million. You're talking prize pools over the course of the year. There was 13 different events. 9 of them were regionals for 100,000. There was 3 majors that were 300,000. And this was essentially every other week minus majors, which had a couple month break. So very frequent, which is the second thing, event frequency. How frequently is this happening? Is the year bursting with competition, or is it solely reliant on the infrequent first party organizers? Are there other ones? Rocket League kind of goes here and there, because while there is a ton of first party attraction, there's also third-party events as well, like Gamers 8, like Beyond the Summit, Gold Rush coming up in a couple weeks. There's also 2v2s and 1v1 tournaments and show matches, and when I put on the Brawl or Johnny Boy does SMAT, or all those different types of things go into this category. The competitiveness, I think that one's pretty self-explanatory, but yes, Rocket League tends to have a thriving skill ceiling. People are trying to push that boundary, and it is very engaging to watch because of that. The competition of the game itself is very enticing to audiences, and one of the best things about Rocket League to all audiences, young and old. It is very accessible. And then the last one, the state of the community, health of the lower tier sections, and general condition of the esport as a dynamic entity. As a whole, RLCS, how do we support the amateur, the bubble scene, the top to bottom? It's not just the very top, but can we sustain it? Things like the rival series now being gone, there's no more field, there's no more of the grid. These types of things, how is that support infrastructure? We'll get into that in more specifics. The differences between tier 1, 2, and 3. Tier 1, these games have storied histories and also have the potential for more growth in the future. They're not just at the top and are going to stagnate. Will they continue to grow? They are also consistently near the top, and this is the big one when it comes to viewership, watch time, both in peaks and in concurrent. The actual statistics and the actual factors that go into it, a lot of it is as an advertiser, as a brand. If I'm watching this, how many eyes are on it? Very big factor. Tier 2 are titles that are just a step below that. They're not quite at the big guys, the Dota 2s with a $34 million prize pool that's a compendium, not the League of Legends, not the Counter-Strikes, just a step below in both viewership, prize money, and general mainstream acceptance, which is really important. You're talking about some things that are less identifiable. While their niche community absolutely adores it, it may not get the wide stream attention of the global scale. They also still continue to maintain loyal fan bases. Even though they may not have the crazy growth, Tier 1 can also supersede that depending on if it is just that big. PUBG Mobile is one of these. The widespread doesn't really consider mobile gaming as like a true esport, but PUBG Mobile with their prize pools being in like the top 4 or top 3, something ridiculous. You're talking their audiences and their peak viewership is absolutely insane because of accessibility on phones. One of those that is kind of taken over by storm because of the South Korea tournaments and everything else going on in all the Eastern markets. So some that may surprise you in that Tier 1 echelon or Tier 2, depending on where they may be. And last but not least, Tier 3. These are titles that have different stories and trajectories. This is kind of a like honorable mention where the esport is there. It's notable. There's still a lot of room for growth. Maybe it's a little bit newer, but there are ones that I think are in conversation where they could blossom into something more special. But I put them as like my notable honorable mentions type category for Tier 3. So now that we know how we define these esports, let's talk about things that these organizations, these developers, these production teams do to separate each other. There are certain ones like E-League, WePlay, things that have unique sets or different styles, whether it be a more serious suit and tie, professional, or a set that looks like you're in a arena fighting for Mortal Kombat. There's different approaches and different sides you can do. You can take the BTS approach, which is very much so focused on different characteristics and personalities of the players and the coaches and the pros, as well as the casters and everything else, versus super strict, hey, we're here to win money, it's a tournament type of style. There's different ways you can approach this. There's different lengths of tournaments as well. You're talking Dota, the international is a month long, while Rocket League managed to have its longest, which was 11 days. So different contrast there. Also, you're talking different time lengths in the sense of how long it's been developed. Counter-Strike, a little bit of a head start, been around for about 3 decades, while games like League of Legends been around for 15. Rocket League going in its 7th year. So there is a lot of different determining factors of that kind of stuff, and when you have more time, you're going to start to see things. I think Rocket League in particular is kind of starting to finally take its training wheels off. I've said this many a time where I think it's about to enter its golden era or its golden years. It has gone through the trials and tribulations of what comes with an esport. We try a bunch of different formats. We try different structures. We are trying to create a foundation to build upon, and we have gone through all those hurdles. And finally, now it seems like we can start to get to that next step with the support of Daddy Epic Games, because Epic Games money is a very real thing. So those types of things I think all apply. You also then have to take in consideration as well brand deals and the partnerships that happen, both endemic and non-endemic. If you guys don't know what an endemic partnership is something that is endemic to the space. Speaking of computer peripherals, monitors, keyboards, headsets, things like HyperX, Razer, etc. Those make a ton of sense. They are a one-to-one of you play video games, you need hardware to play video games. Intel, AMD, Nvidia, endemic sponsorships. Non-endemic are things that aren't really relatable to the specific space. In the past, Rocket League has done stuff like Transformers. They have done things like Mobile One, Verizon. You are starting to see like MasterCard and Visa and stuff get involved. Red Bull can be considered both endemic and non-endemic because gamers tend to have energy drinks. So that can be applied. Ironically enough, with it being an E for Everyone game for Rocket League, energy drinks are not allowed to sponsor the Rocket League space. So there are certain things and different restrictions based upon your title, who it's being projected to, what kind of fan bases you have, things like certain songs in the game, the music that's incorporated. Rocket League arguably has one of the best soundtracks because of the way they've partnership with Monster Cat artists and everything else, bringing in people like Cascade and the different things. They have community and creators within. Then you go and look at League of Legends, and KDA was a platinum album. Christian Link or Preco, who's a buddy of mine over there, and what they've done with Arcane and the different Pentakill albums that they've done. I mean, you're talking some of these songs that were made for like lore and background for characters are turning into like #1 on the charts and billboards. So a lot of really cool things that are being done from different spaces. And that's just in the like in your face stuff, not behind the scenes things that we've really deep dived. The one thing that I think that Rocket League has in particular over every other esport, and I don't know why BRs don't do this specifically, is team streams. Day 0, day 1 broadcasts where you're allowing teams to cover portions of the tournament, less overhead on the developer. It's less money that they've got to put in, less time, production costs, all that kind of stuff. And it also is a really unique way to showcase community talent, build up and try to identify new things, whether it be your casters or production help or TOs or admins or any of that types. There's a lot of people. We talk about it takes a village to run one of these things. Think about how many people, different production teams, both on NA and EU broadcasts. You're talking the casters, the production teams behind those shows, all the graphic assets, all those different factors just to showcase matches that normally would be done by Psionic. So the fact that team streams don't exist really anywhere else, I don't know why Call of Duty doesn't do it. I don't know why any BR, whether it be Apex Legends or the others, don't do it. But when you've got 20 teams, 16 teams, whatever, and they're all playing and you've got a bunch of different perspectives, yes, you allow your creators to stream, but it'd be awesome if I'm a fan of a certain team like TSM playing in Apex to be able to go and watch and listen to their comms and get that very specific information that I can't get anywhere else, which Rocket League implemented a couple of years back, and I think it is arguably one of the greatest things they've ever done. So something that I think other esports could definitely learn some. So these are some of the ideas and some of the concepts that are taken into consideration that are unique to certain games that others could learn from. And then there's obviously, we haven't really talked about Riot Games, but League of Legends is just completely different. Putting on concerts, selling out Olympic venues in hours, like League of Legends is a global phenomenon because they hit every market. We talk about Rocket League bringing in these expansion regions with APAC and MENA and SSA and stuff. Obviously, it's their first year. It's going to take some time to grow and develop. But primarily, one of the biggest things that I worry about with Rocket League is it really hasn't gotten the Eastern draw. You look at a game like League of Legends that was extremely popular in places like China, Korea, etc. And it was the first free-to-play game that came over to the United States that people were like, wait, I can play this game for free, and if I just spend money on cosmetics, that's fine. And the game exploded. You don't really have, with Rocket League, even with it being free to play now, the draw that you get from those Eastern cultures as much. Maybe that'll change with APAC and SSA and stuff. But that culture does like the whole pay to win concept. They like the gambling mechanics of certain games, like Genshin Impact and stuff like that. But Rocket League is a game because it doesn't translate from anything they've ever played, whether it be an FPS or a MOBA or something like that, is very polarizing. People usually, when they sit down and play Rocket League for the first time, are like, holy cow, I can see myself improving at a linear rate. The more time and effort I put in, the better I get. And I see this until they hit a plateau, and then they have to put in that extra effort to learn different mechanics or, you know, kind of push past that barrier. But when you have games that you've gotten used to, you know, point and click, that is same no matter what game you go to. So there was a lot of people that are polarizing in the sense of, this is very difficult, I don't like it. I'm pretty sure the Japanese client or the Chinese client literally has a ball trajectory that showcases where the ball is going to be in early training to get people an easier way into the game, which I don't know long-term the effects that would have. If I learned with ball trajectory and all of a sudden you get rid of that when I jump into competitive, what that may look like. So there's a lot of things that I'm interested to see now that the client is out and what it means long-term. But you were talking about a culture that has a massive, massive player base that we haven't really tapped to yet in just the Rocket League sense. So it'll be interesting to see how that one develops, but I do know that is a very key factor in making a successful esport. Even if we want to agree or disagree with it, but objectively, having those cultures involved and ingrained in your esport is massive. And it is going to be a lot of pressure, whether they like it or not, on Realize, LCT, Maxu, all those guys that have the chance to become these superstars for their regions. But it is up to people like that to start pushing it in their region. Whether they want that responsibility or not, it is going to make a big difference. Breaking down the actual specifics and the numbers, we're going to start with Rocket League and talk about over this last year, a couple of different events that we're going to compare to League of Legends, and we're going to attempt to do Counter-Strike and Dota because those games are the wild, wild west with how many results they have. You're talking a franchise league where teams are spending a ton of money to have a guaranteed spot, while RLCS is a circuit-based system, as well as Counter-Strike, where it doesn't matter, you, me, and a friend of yours can sign up, and we can, if we're good enough, play in the RLCS. We can do that literally every other week. As long as we get through the qualifiers, and if we continue to show performances, we too can go and play at the World Championship. While other teams, doesn't matter how good or bad you are, like Call of Duty, you're paying, you know, $20-25 million for a spot. You guarantee that spot, whether you go 0-100 or 100-0, you're still there, and then crazy roster changes happen. So with Rocket League, the RLCS 2021-2022 season just had a $6 million prize pool. There was 13 tournaments, one in Sweden that people could not attend, and then LA, London, and Dallas for the World Championship, which people could attend. You're talking size of venues anywhere from 6,000 to 13,000, with pretty good selling and pretty good like live event capacity. Big prize pools. The World Championship itself was $2.085 million, and then the regional events, which lead into the major, are all $100,000, with the majors being $300,000. And these happen about every other week. and the majors happen roughly every 3 to 4 months. So you're talking very, very frequent in the capacity of how often the events are happening. You're also talking about the prize money is pretty good. And as for the viewership, you're talking a peak at 378,000 viewers for the World Championship with 10.1 million hours watched. But the majors roughly around the 250 to 280 mark with about 4 to 5 million hours watched. You're talking League of Legends. They have roughly $200,000 prize pool range every 6 months with the LEC and the LCS, with their peak viewership being anywhere from 200,000 to just shy of 1 million. It's different. You're talking LEC in spring and summer was 843,000 and 723,000. The big difference, though, is because of the way the game is played, in my opinion, and I that's the correlation I guess I would make. A entire series in Rocket League is about 45 minutes to an hour. That's talking pre-show, post-show breakdown, highlights, replays, as well as the gameplay itself. A best of 5 or best 7 is about an hour. You're talking League of Legends, one individual game in a best of series can take an hour. It can go anywhere from 15, 20 minutes all the way to 35, 40 minutes. And they're playing like a best of 3 or a best of 5 sometimes. And that changes, I think, the perspective of watch time quite a bit, where you're talking people are heavily invested into the lane phase, jungling, team fights, the counterattacks, the pushes, the split, the lane splits, and all that kind of stuff. And that depth in that strategy, I think, is where you see a lot of that viewership go up. I mean, you're talking 10 million hours is their lowest, which is our highest we've ever had. They're talking 10 million hours watched, 17, 25, 20, 36.5 million, 33 million. That's triple our watch time. That's triple the amount of time people are ingrained into their broadcast, which when I bring that to a sponsorship or a brand or a partner and say, hey, while Rocket League's pulling great viewership on the everyday regional stuff, our viewership in this event alone, where we know people are going to tune in 3 times as much. And that's a pretty big selling point. So there's pros and cons to both sides, I would say. The big thing with Rocket League is you can go and watch their regionals, whether it be NA, EU, and some of the other regions. But our general viewership is anywhere from 60 to 100,000 for our regional events, which trumps a lot of different esports, whether it be Call of Duty by far. That's bigger than some of the Call of Duty majors, where like some of their big events are pulling like 70, 80K. Our regional events, which is 1/13 of the whole thing, the whole big shebang, is still pulling more than that. League of Legends, LEC, and LCS, and the non-major things, it pulls a little bit more. So the general average of Rocket League is pretty high, but the peak is nowhere near some of these other esports. I don't know if that's due to refinement or due to frequency or what the situation is, but I'm not going to try to correlate and give you a BS answer for why that is. When you talk about Counter-Strike being kind of the wild, wild west for tournaments, there's so many. What's cool about Counter-Strike is the developer is pretty hands-off. They allow third-party and first-party to kind of go crazy, whether it be Blast or the majors or anything else. Basically, what Counter-Strike says, hey, community, you want to make a new map, you want to tweak and tailor things, you want to make us a spectator system, you want us to do pick'ems and ban phases. You guys go crazy. When it gets to the point that we should care, Valve, our team will step in, we'll kind of provide some guidelines and some restraints. And then, yeah, go crazy again. We'll back off and let you kind of do your thing. And because of that, people are extremely excited to put in their all for its Counter-Strike. You're seeing like Blast Premier had 350,000 viewers, 4.4 million hours watched with a prize pool of just shy of 200K. I Am Cologne in 2022, 26 million hours watched, $1 million prize pool, and 1.25 million concurrent at a peak. That is insane. And that's not even their highest. So there is certain games in the mobile markets as well, like Arena Free Fire, that pull like 3.3 million. You got PUBG Mobile pulling a bunch because of the accessibility and the embedded stuff with phones. But games like Counter-Strike, where you're able to watch in-game client, I think that's something that Sonic should really look into. And I don't know how well that's going to go with the whole Unreal Engine 5 thing, but the ability to, where it says esports is live and you click it and it brings open Twitch, if you could just watch that in-game client, I would be interested to see what happens with that 90 million player base that you have. So things like that can definitely benefit your game. But overall, looking at how different things are done and the different numbers and everything, Rocket League as a consistency level is pretty dang solid, but their peaks are much less than some of these other teams and these other games like the Dotas, the League of Legends, the Counter-Strike, even PUBG Mobile, Arena Free Fire, some of these mobile games that are absolutely massive. So that type of stuff is there, but when it comes to consistency with prize pools, frequency of tournaments, the season is pretty dang long, so finding a way to take a step back and enable third-party organizers. You're seeing BTS, like we talked about, Gamers 8. We're seeing Gold Rush come up again. Some community tournaments, like when I used to run the Brawl. Lethmir did his Euro Cup. Johnny Boy runs all his show matches and stuff. There is still some support there. Now, I did mention the state of the community for Rocket League, and that is also a concern, is making sure that there is still more support for the bubble scene and the amateur scene. These are things that I've talked about in the past, and I don't want to put on too much in this video, but again, you got to make sure that that infrastructure and that foundation is still selective. While they're continuing to refine the top, and I think the professional level of play is good, salaries are there, the organizations are very supportive, players are making a bunch of money, they've got a ton of exposure. It'd always be better building profiles on these players, building them to the superstars that they could be, rather than them just starting their own YouTube channels, making sure that the content pieces aren't just at live events, but also happen during offline. Let me say that backwards, say the other way. While the support is great for them when they are in offline events and LAN environment, the online events like the regionals do not have that supporting content to the same level, which is something that I think really needs to happen. You look at some of these other esports organizations and some of these other games where the supporting visual content and the additional B-roll stuff and the different supporting features and concepts are definitely there. It's something that is significantly lacking in my opinion still, when you have rookies like Daniel and stuff come in and I don't even have a profile on him to watch as an introduction. You know, we want to build these players to be as big as possible and then let the rest happen. So people need to become invested in these games, and that applies all the way to the bottom as well. If you're not a top 16 team and you are in the 17 to 32 kind of range, you sit and do nothing for a week to week, and then you hope that you get through in qualifiers. And hopefully someone other than, you know, the AAA Challenger Series, something like the Renegades Cup comes back and helps support those things. So enough of kind of the stats and all the crazy things. Kind of give you guys my ultimate verdict, which is the third thing of this video, talking about the different separation, the different categories, the factors and things that I'm kind of keeping, the different variables. But ultimately, when it comes to the different categories and ultimately what I think Rocket League comes into, there is so many things they're doing right. Training wheels, like I said, are off. Golden era. You saw the first circuit-based season, $6 million prize pool, good viewership, selling out venues. This is the first time that they've been back. While, you know, unless you're Riot, you continue to persist through the pandemic. There was a lot of really good, but there's also some things that have concerns for me, and I'm curious on how they will approach this going into 2022, 2023. Rocket League has been in consideration for tier 2, almost tier 1 for probably about 2-3 years now. I think they got bumped down actually by one of the like major websites that does the ranking list in early 2000 or like season 10. I think they got bumped down, but have 100% this season pushed themselves back into tier 2 from the outside perspective. But as someone who's endemic to the space and has been paying attention to it for a long time, I would have to agree. I think Rocket League as a esport is closer to tier 1 than it is tier 2. But at the same time, there's a lot of things that keep it in that tier 2, and a lot of it is the peaks and the heights that some of these other esports have, the infrastructure and the support that they get from the developer at the high level. I mean, you're talking, like I said, you've got some of these songs and these like it's a full show on Netflix from like some people like League of Legends. Their trophies are being made by Gucci and like ridiculous collaborations and brands like in the mainstream stuff that, you know, you're walking down the street at a store and you go into a Gucci store and all of a sudden you see a collaboration with League of Legends. That stuff Rocket League hasn't really touched or tapped into yet. I mean, you saw the merch at the World Championship, which was pretty poor in my opinion in comparison. It looked good, it just quality wise and stuff was not it. So those little things make a huge difference between the separation and those additional things that we talked about kind of in the second category of how to separate yourselves is where I think Rocket League is really going to start to have to tap into. And that comes with having a bigger staff, more time and experience. Because as I said, again, only 6-7 years in, it's going to take some time. But there is so many factors that I was like, yep, tier 1, it's starting to get there. I think we all agree with the capabilities. Super accessible, easy to understand, all that kind of stuff. The question I guess I propose is kind of, will that come back to bite Rocket League? Focusing on a traditional sport. No unique variants in the maps, only visually. There is no real depth outside of, hey, player goes for air dribble with flip reset. Does he fake it? Does he go high? Does he go low? Player on backboard, do they challenge? Do they try to win a 50? Do they like, there is definitely the meta and the chess match and the high depth, the in-depth gameplay that's going on. But when it comes to the analysis and everything else, ball goes in net, it's pretty straightforward. But in League of Legends, you've got jungle and lane phase, you've got different meta changes, you've got a bunch of different champions, you've got a bunch of different abilities and strategies and stun combination and all these different things. Counter-Strike, you've got eco, different guns and the balancing of that and the different maps and the different strategies and pocket pick. there's a lot of depth in that I think makes the fan base way more invested. And with Rocket League, while it does have that accessibility and that draw for a lot of people, is that enough? And you've seen experimentation with the 1v1 show matches. You've seen stuff with the freestyling. You've seen stuff like the crew battle formats and the conversation that creates of like, who do they field? Are they going to see a rematch between these 1v1 players? That kind of stuff is being experimented upon, and I think there's a reason for that. But I'm very interested to see on what happens moving forward in the future because of those reasons. So as of right now, I do think Rocket League is still tier 2. I think there's so much potential, and we all believe it for it to be tier 1. But there's a couple hurdles that have to be gotten over before we can classify it that way. So that is going to do it for today's video. If you guys do enjoy these types of conversations where I take a step back, do a little bit of homework, and present a situation, let me know in the comments down below. Also, let me know who you guys have when it comes to certain esports. Is there certain esports that I'm not thinking about? Is there ones that you think don't get enough love? Maybe you think Rocket League is a tier 1. Let me know in the comments down below on how you feel. And while you're down there, if you enjoy the content, consider giving it a thumbs up and hitting subscribe and turning on notifications, as it does help me out greatly. Trying to hit 50k subs here shortly. And we'll see you in the next one. Peace.